What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more INXS, and we're returning for the final track on their Kick album, 1987. Thank you again to Nikita, not only for telling me that some of the bonus material might be worth coming back at a later date and going through for reactions, and thus moving on to the next album, but indeed for sending me more INXS material. So we have material to continue into their catalog proper, and as I said, at some point we'll circle back and go through some of the bonus material from this era and perhaps others. Nevertheless, the last tune on the album is Tiny Daggers, which feels like an expression of an accumulation of small injuries or violence or danger that each one in themselves might not be or might not amount to much, but in totality they could be fatal or at least very harmful. So yes, a dagger is a small weapon which might not inflict the same wounds that a sword or some other form of, firearm, for example, could. But with enough daggers, with enough stabbing, it might be more significant. Now, of course, it could be a visual reference in a narrative, some idea of people having daggers, whether, again, more figurative or literal, and perhaps everyone being armed or potentially dangerous in that regard. But when I looked at the title, my first thought was an accumulation of small injuries that might amount to a great deal, even if any one of them individually wouldn't be much to speak of. So, in any case, I'll see what I can catch on a first listen. This is INXS, the track is Tiny Daggers, and it's the final tune on their 1987 album, Kick.
You ever
That's a very catchy tune. It just has a sonically pleasant feel, and that main like keyboard riff is something that will probably burrow its way into my head. And I do enjoy the guitar work along the way, as well as Michael's voice, of course. And indeed, there's a bit of a bluesy flavor in some of the guitar work and some of his vocals, but less so than on some other tunes. This really did sound to me like enjoyable and memorable 80s pop rock. Again, the kind of tune that I'd find myself humming after initially hearing it, and a bit less like the blues rock or, soulful stylings of some of the other tracks, even if there was a bit of that sound here. So yeah, like sonically, or rather lyrically, I'm not quite sure. I mean, it does sound like Tiny Daggers wasn't really what I was saying, and he does sound like he's questioning, both in general and maybe someone specifically, and it sounds like maybe he's talking about vulnerability, certainly talking about like tiny daggers in the heart, but maybe in a way that, because I think one of the questions is like, I'm guessing, or maybe not even a question, but an assertion that I'm guessing once the lights go off at night, you cry like a baby, you cry like anybody else. So maybe someone who's projecting a steady state, or that they're not affected by emotions or feelings or love in that regard, but the reality is there is a pain that they're trying to withhold or conceal, but when no one's looking and when the lights are out, they're actually feeling it very acutely. But there's a couple elements and a couple lines that, of course, now in the outro I'm not recalling specifically. So I'll be curious to hear what people have to say about this one thematically, because, there were moments and indeed lines that I caught at least in part, but I'm not sure how it all stitches together. And I don't think it was that cumulative damage concept that I considered in advance. But again, Hutchins has a great vocal delivery, like he really, it's not that he's belting here, and it's not that he's especially soulful, but there's a couple moments where he flourishes the melodic run at the end of a word or the end of a line, and where he does get a bit more powerful and rich compared to the, beginnings of lines or like other parts of his vocal performance that really do stand out. So yes, he's got a great voice is what I mean to say. And as I said, I enjoy the guitar work, and especially that main riff, which was, I think, like the post-chorus segment. So yeah, a very memorable tune and a nice ending to the album. I think it's the kind of album or the kind of tune that'll leave you thinking like, wow, that was a very pleasant end to this good record. So I do wonder again how this relates to their larger catalog, and ultimately we will be able to find that out. Thank you again to Nikita, and as I said and in the intro, at some point we'll go back and go through some of this bonus stuff on the Japan release of this album. So yes, looking forward to more INXS. Let me know what you think of this one. I will see you next time. Peace.